There's a pattern that shows up in almost every corporate environment, across every industry, in companies of every size. The most competent person in the room is rarely the one who gets promoted. Not occasionally, consistently. And the strange part, the people doing the promoting aren't malicious. They're not running a conspiracy. Most of them would genuinely tell you they want to reward talent. But something keeps getting in the way. And that something isn't what most people think it is.
Workplace problem. Consider someone like Marcus. 4 years at a mid-sized tech company. Every performance review exceeds expectations. Every project delivered on time. Every technical question in the room, he's the one people turn to quietly, one-on-one, when they need the real answer. Then a promotion cycle comes around. A director slot opens up, and a colleague, one whom Marcus has bailed out of at least 3 major crises, gets it. Marcus isn't bitter, he's confused. And that confusion drives him to the most common response in that situation. He works harder. More hours, more output, more expertise. This is the response that almost every competent employee defaults to. The belief underneath it is logical. If I prove my value more clearly, the organization will recognize it. But here's what that belief gets wrong. Organizations don't just reward value, they reward visible, explainable value. And those two things are not the same.
First hidden truth. Here is the first psychological mechanism most people never see. When a manager decides who to promote, they're not just making a judgment about that person. They're making a judgment they will have to defend to their own manager in a meeting they'll be in next week. So the internal question isn't who is the most capable. The internal question is, who can I explain? Organizations promote the most legible employee, the one whose impact the manager can articulate in 30 seconds to someone who has never seen them work. And legibility is not the same as competence. This is the first piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't explain everything, because there's a second mechanism, one that hits even harder, and it's one that competent employees create for themselves without realizing it.
3 workplace stories. Story 1. The Competence Trap. Marcus is exceptional at his role. So exceptional, in fact, that his manager, David, has quietly built 3 workflows around Marcus's involvement. 2 clients specifically request him by name. The team's delivery record is tied to his presence. And this is exactly the problem. When promotion conversations happen, David doesn't think Marcus deserves a bigger role. David thinks, if Marcus moves up, what breaks? That's not a cynical thought, it's a practical one. David is accountable for his team's output. Moving his most reliable person creates immediate risk. The competence trap. The better you are at your current job, the more the organization needs you exactly where you are. Promotions don't just reward past performance, they require a believable case that the organization can afford you to lose you from your current seat. And if you've made yourself too essential there, that case becomes very hard to make. Story 2. The invisible cost of self-reliance. Sarah is one of the highest performers on a consulting team. She's known for solving problems before they escalate. Her manager rarely hears about issues on her projects because by the time an issue would reach him, Sarah has already handled it. From her perspective, this is professionalism. From her manager's perspective, it's silence. Here's what Sarah doesn't realize. When you consistently signal, "I've got it handled," you're also signaling something else. "I don't need anything from you." And that signal quietly breaks a psychological chain called reciprocity. The manager who never gets to help you never gets to invest in you. And people don't advocate for people they haven't invested in. Sarah solves problems invisibly. Her manager promotes people whose problems he's heard about, weighed in on, and helped resolve.
not because he's rewarding dependency, but because those are the employees he feels a stake in. Story 3. The narration advantage. Jake is not the most technically skilled on the team. He knows this. What Jake understands, intuitively or by design, is that impact doesn't register unless it's communicated. After every significant project, Jake sends a short summary to his manager, not bragging, framing. Here's what we were trying to accomplish. Here's how it went. Here's what I learned. He mentions the right names in the right rooms. He connects his work to things senior leadership cares about. He's not inflating his contribution, he's narrating it. And because he narrates it, his manager can repeat it. His director, Rachel, hears a name attached to results. Jake becomes legible, fast. When a director-level opening comes up, Rachel doesn't choose the person with the best skills on paper. She chooses the person she can picture in the role. Jake has made sure she can picture him.
Deeper psychology. What's actually happening in these three stories isn't politics, it's psychology. Specifically, two well-documented cognitive patterns. The first is called the availability heuristic. When human beings make decisions, they naturally rely on the information that comes to mind most easily. Managers aren't different. When promotion decisions happen, the people who surface first in a manager's memory are the people who have generated the most memorable moments, not the most competent moments, but the most recalled ones. A quiet, reliable employee like Marcus generates very few memorable moments because nothing went wrong and he never made noise. A colleague who presented in a cross-functional meeting last month or flagged a risk in a leadership update 2 weeks ago is far easier to recall. Ease of recall is mistaken for importance. The second is the principle of reciprocity. Humans are wired to advocate for people they've invested in. When a manager helps someone navigate a challenge, sits with them through uncertainty, or weighs in on a difficult call, they develop a stake in that person's success. They want the investment to pay off. Sarah, by solving everything herself, denied her manager the opportunity to invest. She was so competent, she made herself psychologically invisible to the very person who controlled her advancement. This is the part no one tells high performers. Self-sufficiency feels like strength. Inside the organizational system, it can function like a wall.
First contrarian observation. Telling a stuck employee to work harder is among the most damaging advice in corporate culture. Not because effort is worthless, but because it assumes the problem is output. It never is. The problem is translation. More work done invisibly is just more invisibility. Working harder at a job no one is watching does not build a career. It builds a cage. Second contrarian observation. The competence trap is not an accident. It is, in many organizations, a feature, not a bug. An organization that keeps its best technical people exactly where they are preserves its operational stability. The system isn't broken, it's working as designed. The question is whether your goals align with what the system is designed to produce. If you want to move up, you have to actively opt out of becoming indispensable to the role you're currently in, which means training your replacement before you're ready to leave, building redundancy in your own function, making yourself easy to promote by making yourself possible to replace. That is counterintuitive, but it's how the system actually works. Practical framework. Here is a 3-part framework called the visibility loop. Not for playing politics, for making your competence readable to the people who control your advancement. Narrate. After every meaningful piece of work, translate it into leadership language. Not a list of tasks, a story of impact. What was the problem? What did you do? What changed because of it? 1 paragraph. Send it to your manager. Do this consistently and you generate the recall advantage. Connect. Create strategic moments where your manager or director gets to be involved in something you're working on, not because you need help, but because shared experience creates investment. Ask for their input before you have a problem, not after. That's not weakness, that's giving someone a reason to root for you. Position. Begin doing visible work adjacent to the level above you. Volunteer to present in forums where senior leaders are present. Make your name known to the decision makers above your direct manager, not aggressively, but consistently. Rachel, the executive, should know who you are before she's ever asked to approve your promotion. None of these steps require you to be less competent. They require you to stop assuming that competence speaks for itself. It never has. It never will.
Here's what's actually happening inside every organization every day. There are employees who are exceptional at doing the work, and there are employees who are exceptional at making the work visible. The rarest employees, the ones who tend to rise, are the ones who learn to do both. Marcus doesn't lack ability, he lacks translation. Sarah doesn't lack results, she lacks reciprocity. Jake isn't more talented, he's more legible. The system isn't perfectly fair, but it's also not random. There's a logic to who advances, and that logic can be understood and worked with. Competence earns you the right to stay in the room. Visibility earns you the right to move to a bigger one. Most people spend their entire careers building only one of those things and wondering why the other never comes.